Now let's look more specifically at the black letter law governing competition in the Sultanate. Figure 5 shows some of the substantive articles from the competition order in Brunei. We've divided the order into substantive issues and procedural issues. And each column shows not only the issue addressed, but the importance of that issue and the likely impact of this competition order on the Bruneian economy. For substantive issues like the Competition Commission's independence, this will represent a key determinant of the success of competition policy in Brunei. We'll show data later analyzing the extent to which competition agency independence helps promote the competitiveness of an economy. And given Brunei's economic structure, particularly in terms of certain dominant companies, that tackling the dominant position in the Brunei economy will be a very important step toward promoting competition. Later in this presentation, we look at procedures and the procedural efficiency of competition agencies, and thus we look at the importance of the orders or procedures in the competition order in terms of setting up procedures which will help this agency to safeguard competition both within Brunei and between other countries. The order naturally will have relatively minor impacts on procedures, which anyway in most jurisdictions are covered by internal rulemaking. Nevertheless, there are significant differences not only in the substantive issues, but also in the procedural issues, which will hinder the competition order unless there's this kind of big bang change, which we've discussed in a previous infographic. Now, I mentioned briefly the role of an independent competition agency. In Bruneian jurisprudence and in its political system more generally, independence is less important than in other economies with a Anglo-Saxon or neoliberal tradition. Thus, automatically militating for the independence of such a commission or agency would seem to run counter with the general jurisprudence and institutional setup in the Sultanate. Yet, there's cause for hope, as Figure 6 shows. Independence of a competition agency tends to increase over time. The figure shows an independence index where higher means more independent. If the US, Australia, and Mexico have relatively independent competition agencies, it's not the case that they were born this way and became independent immediately. In another study looking at Malaysia, which you can find a link to in this presentation, we show that it takes almost 75 years for a competition commission to reach its full effectiveness. Thus, the Bruneian competition order is very new. Naturally, we can't just draw a line between the competitiveness of a country and the independence of its competition agency, because there's a bunch of factors which interfere with this relationship. Figure 7 shows one of these econometric analyses which try and look at the factors contributing to a competition authority's effectiveness. Their econometric analysis shows that de facto independence, not just being independent on paper, but actually being independent, has the largest effect on a competition agency's effectiveness, and you can see the paper for the more exact definition of such effectiveness. We see that taking an economic approach to competition issues rather than simply a legal one also helps promote the effectiveness of the agency. And we see that factors which supposedly should be important, such as the level of income in the country or even the basis for the competition law, have little effect and indeed might have a negative effect on the competition agency's ability to promote competition within a particular jurisdiction.